Good afternoon. So the most important thing in this day after the election, on a fairly comfortable day, although it's getting chillier, is we survived this election. We survived it in the sense that the most radical possibilities were not realized. We still don't know, as I'm speaking, how the House and Senate will be divided. But if you were to bet, you would bet the House would be very narrowly in the Republican camp, and the Senate might yet become Democrat narrowly, perhaps one senator more than previously. And we won't know until after the special election in Georgia, perhaps, what is going to finally happen. Because the vote was so close, and it's less than a percentage point, they have a runoff because they both have a plurality. And there's a 2-point vote for the Libertarian. And in a proportional representation situation, you wouldn't need to have a runoff because you'd indicate your preferences. The Libertarian would mostly be in third place. He'd fall out, and then you'd see who got the balance of the vote. Instead, the voters are going to have to put up with several weeks of this. And when I say put up with it, it's a duty and an obligation. But a different approach would mean we didn't have to have another election. But more particularly, what are we looking at? We're looking at an election that required we the people from various places to make a difference in what seemed like it was going to be a strong turn toward the far right, toward autocracy and monarchy and the rule of the cultish Trump team. Instead, what we have is we have women came out without regard to party and reflected their concerns about their individual rights and liberties. The young apparently came out. I haven't seen the numbers myself, but the young apparently came out in numbers that made a difference, like they did in 2020. So they have made the connection, it seems to me, and this is, I don't mean this to be that they would miss the obvious, but everything else that's going on in their life did not prevent them from focusing on the fact that government matters to them, whether they get involved and are as obsessive as I or you, that they realize it's important. And it is important not only because of the issues that they care about, which are significant, but they also, I think, are responding to a theme. And the theme is that we care about democracy. That's the value we seek to establish. And then finally, there are persons of color, and I haven't seen the breakout on the Latino and Latina vote, because there was a lot of talk before the election that they were going to lean toward Republican candidates. As far as I can tell, there haven't been any significant blow-ups in terms of the election, in terms of misconduct or alleged fraud or incidents of violence. If there are any, we'll hear about that in the days ahead, but I suspect there are none. Many years ago, when I was a federal prosecutor, and there was a federal election, that is a presidential election, I was chosen as the one person in New York for the U.S. Attorney's Office who would handle any complaints about the election if they occurred. Now think about it. There was not a single complaint in the city or the Southern District that I had to even take a phone call and say, oh, that's nothing or that is something. Not one call. So when they first assigned me, I said, well, what is that going to be like? I said, well, it probably won't be like much. That's this election. So from that year, when I was a young puppy prosecutor to now, when have we had rampant fraud, significant fraud worth talking about or combating from then to now? So I think that had to hurt the issue, which is the lying issue, the election deniers. People know that it was real, no matter what they might hum to the cultist tune. The rest of us knew that that was nonsense. So what did America really decide? And again, not all the returns are in. But I think what they decided was we have to be adults if our leaders are not. We have to choose and support people who agree with that. And I think that was as or more important than important issues, including what are we doing about inflation? People care about that. I think Biden has already spoken after the election and said he gets it. He's going to deal with that. And what are we going to do about our economy? Well, we're going to deal with that too. What are we going to do with the young, and so on and so forth? In fact, he said that all the principles that he embraced as what his plan is as our executive remains the same. That said, he says he thinks America wants us to work together. Now, it remains to be seen if that can happen. But let's consider for a moment, if the Republicans take the House as appears likely right now, does that make McCarthy the Speaker? And can McCarthy control his caucus? Because if he has a narrow band of support, he's going to have to deal with perhaps others who would challenge him. No Jacket Jordan. You know, there's a whole bunch of these people in there that are going to demand recognition and participation. What about the Senate? What happens to Manchin's control and Sinema's control in the old Senate? If the Republicans take over, are we going to have cloture? Meaning, is it still going to be required for non-financial, non-budgetary matters that it requires 60 votes to pass anything? And finally, our biggest defense and our biggest protection is that in the end, Biden has a powerful veto power, and there's no way it can be overridden. The numbers aren't there. As long as Biden is talking to Democrats, the Democrats are talking to him, even in the minority. So what we now know is, going forward, we are in a position to govern if we choose to cooperate with each other. We know that the extremes can be defeated by the president in the White House. We know the possibility of compromise to get anything done. It can be done, but it's going to require Republicans to do something, and if they don't, that will be another issue in the election. But finally, and this is not my pet peeve, it is that we cannot assume that because we dodged the autocratic bullet in this election, that we can give a pass to those criminals who would bring down our government. And criminal number one, public enemy number one, is a guy by the name of Trump. And we must remember to fight this man, as he is a cancer on our society. He is the enemy within. He is the reason that voters had to decide what they wanted in terms of government, and they disapproved his notion of who should run for office, namely the election deniers. Now, the question is, will Republicans now feel more independent? Since, can he threaten them in primaries? Will they feel that he can do that and still compromise their careers? If so, then Trump may be on his way to getting the nomination. In the meantime, Garland should be kicked out the door. So should the head of the FBI. And we should get down and get serious about the crimes committed by Trump and his minions. Nothing less will satisfy the notion that no man is above the law. Nothing less will satisfy the notion that the law must be obeyed and our Constitution must be obeyed. Otherwise, we cannot assume order. We must presume chaos. So, that's my short take in a non-statistical way of where I think we are the day after the election that did not cause a bright red wave, and maybe not even a ripple, but it has forced us to consider how we handle our next lease on political life. Do we do everything we can to govern, but also bring to justice those who do not govern, do not care to govern, do not care about the people, do not care about democracy, do not care to do what our founding fathers and women since and others since cared to make of this nation. We have been working on perfecting this union, and we don't need those that would destroy it. So, here I am in our cathedral of trees, sans leaves more and more, and I'll try to talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.